whole life is an attempt to convince someone of something. If you want to get a promotion at work, or gather a group of friends together, learn how to convince. The ability to convince is an important tool for influencing other people, not only for your own purposes, but also for the purposes of the one we convince. From this video you will learn 9 ways to convince people that will significantly change your life. Watch the video to the end to convince your reality. To those who can be persuaded, it is impossible to convince a person to do something that contradicts his moral principles, but under the right circumstances it is possible to convince anyone. The first step of persuasion is to recognize people who will eventually accept your point of view, and direct attention and energy to them. Assess the situation, people's reaction, the possibility of outsiders influencing the opinion of the interlocutor. Remember that the result of the dialogue should be beneficial for both sides. The basis of persuasion is context and time. The context shows what is acceptable in specific circumstances. History teacher Ron Jones wanted to give his students a reliable answer to the question how people could follow Hitler, knowing about his ideas, and conducted an experiment. The third way. On Monday he publicly announced to his students that he had plans to create a school group, and during the lecture he told how important discipline and obedience play for this. On Tuesday he spoke to students about the power of unity, and on Wednesday he talked about the power of action. Thursday was a day of reasoning about the power of pride, and the audience had already gathered 80. About 200 students attended the Friday lecture who enthusiastically listened to a lecture about the youth program for the benefit of the people. At the end of the experiment, the teacher declared to the students that he does not create any movement, and that all this was invented in order to show how easy it is to captivate a person with the wrong idea if you present it carefully and emphasize its correctness. Some school children left the room with tears in their eyes. You can captivate people with any idea if you correctly fit it into the context. As Jones did, you need to try convincing people when they are morally defenseless. Tanya D is not a sport. There is one way to achieve a better result in a dispute: to avoid it. In 9 out of 10 cases after a dispute, not every it remains confident in its rightness. Think about what is more important to you than the feeling of external victories or the goodwill of a person. If you want to convince people and defend your position, learn how to avoid by useful disputes, and you know how not to argue. Tell us in the comments what methods you use to convince people to slip away the reception of prudent people. With an elegant joke, they open themselves a way out of the most confusing maze. With a smile, they know how to get out unharmed from a fierce dispute. Baltasar Garson and morality from be confident in yourself and your positions 100%. To convince, radiate confidence, firmness and steadfastness of the interlocutor in your rightness. Body posture, look, voice, everything should speak for you. The person will feel the slightest doubt. The foundations of confidence, naturalness. Do not pretend to be a confident person. Be charisma. Charisma is what you say and do. Subconscious social signals, physical expression and attitude towards others play a role in the development of charisma. Charisma is a great authority when people like you because of the way you speak, and for self-control, calmness of the relationship you can provide. They are greatly influenced and instantly convinced by their true charisma is the ability to evoke the strongest inspiration within themselves and to demonstrate it externally. This makes a person the object of close attention and unconscious imitation by others. Greenfield arrange the interlocutor. Talk about what excites the interlocutor. Show interest in his life. Address by name to get a person to do what you want. Do not skimp on compliments. A person will believe everything if it's a compliment, because everyone likes praise. We need, if we hear a compliment from someone, We treat the person better because we tend to trust people who have warm feelings. It will be easier to convince the person if you are kind to him. Try to make sincere compliments to people, especially for things for which they are not usually praised. This is the simplest method of persuasion that costs nothing but a minute to think. More often talk about the interlocutor. They talk about themselves. Let the other person feel his importance. This will endear him to you. Always inspire your interlocutor with the consciousness of his significance. Dale Carnegie. Perform in public more often. To be successful in convincing people, master the art of public speaking. Most people would rather die than stand on stage to address the audience regardless of its size. Fear of public speaking is the second most popular phobia after the fear of death. It is experienced by more than 90% of humanity. Public speaking requires confidence, planning, research, focus, and audience analysis. Therefore, to convince a person's skill in public speaking is a prerequisite. You need to have the courage to express your beliefs. Ivan Mikhailovich Sechenov. Let the interlocutor talk. Before convincing the interlocutor, give him the opportunity to speak out. Do not interrupt and do not rush him, even if you do not agree or the opponent's opinion. This technique will help to win over the interlocutor. Most people more often like to talk about themselves and their achievements than listen to someone talking about themselves. About 60% of dialogues are concentrated on the personality of one of the participants in the conversation, and this figure increases to 80% when communicating on social networks. In order to successfully defend a point of view, allow the interlocutor to speak out completely. This will help him to let off steam, and you will be able to inform much easier. Always give the interlocutor the opportunity to speak out. If you want to learn how to persuade people of your point of view, I respect any beliefs, and above all those that are incompatible with mine. Salvador Dali. Learn to clearly convey a thought. If you cannot explain your point of view to an 8th grader so that he can clearly retell it to another adult, you will have to simplify it. The art of persuasion in simplicity. Simplify it as much as possible, your thought, and talk to. In other words, exclude words from the lexicon of words. Maybe they probably do not add other expressions with persuasiveness. Parasitic words fly into the same trash can as it's shorter. But in general, over the past 10 years, the average duration of human concentration reduced from 12 seconds to 8. This means that you need to learn how to build speech correctly. Pay attention to how to speak, and do not use excessive abbreviations. Incomprehensible terms. Reduce the number of introductory words. It happens that one catchy word can replace several sentences and decorate your speech too much, since this prevents you from grasping the meaning. Remember, the simpler you speak, the easier it is to understand you. If you speak only to the point, it shows that you think clearly, and you should not doubt your statements. It is better to talk only about what you are well versed in. You need to make the speech euphonious and bright to the listener. You need to immediately make it clear that you want to reach him. To convey the meaning of speech should be traced immediately. Give clarity to ideas. Use an interesting comparison that attracts attention, makes you think, and therefore realize and learn to use a verbal illustration or parable that will better demonstrate your thought. Tell stories. When you try to convey your point of view, stories are able to convince people and influence them. People pay their attention differently when listening to a narrative or illustration, as opposed to presenting facts and figures. Show people your idea or position through stories so they will understand you better. Martins Willing says that stories are often more convincing than simple statements of facts. If you can show your idea in the form of the potential impact will be even greater. Be prepared. The most important thing is to have adequate information about people and the situation around you. Adequate preparation will allow you to convince effectively. In order to convince someone of something, you should always have sufficient information about your environment. Know your audience. For example, people who do not have cars cannot be persuaded to buy auto parts. Therefore, always try to find out something to the person you want to prove something to. The more carefully you prepare, the more convincing you will be. More chances to get a job in a company if you learn everything about its history, products and services. Instead of starting with your argument, start with statements or premises with which your audience will agree. Create a foundation for further communication. Remember that the body in motion tends to stay in motion. This also applies to the head. I nod and in agreement. Jeff Haden. Apply these 9 ways of persuasion and become the person you want to follow until you meet friends soon. Follow